Jay Sekulow, who is the leading director and, of course, chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice and also a counsel to the president. I'll let him tell us the whole story himself. Jay, walk us through exactly what happened and how basically MSNBC purposely took your words out of context.
Well, Sean, here's what happened. Last night, James Rosen, our friend James Rosen, reported that the Department of Justice lawyer who last week was demoted, Bruce Orr, who was the one that made the off-the-record, so to speak, or behind-the-scenes, non-disclosed outreaches to Fusion GPS and to Christopher Steele, that his wife, this is Bruce Orr's wife, who, by the way, he was a high-ranking number 4 in the Justice Department. He was an associate deputy attorney general. His wife was employed by Fusion GPS. And, of course, my concern from the outset has been with that whole Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele, fake dossier, was that utilized to get FISA warrants? And there's indications that a lot of people are talking about that's probably what happened. So that raised a very serious problem in our view, and we thought, and I thought as the lawyer, that what needs to happen is a special counsel needs to be appointed just to investigate these multiple conflicts of interest as it relates to the Fusion GPS Bruce Orr situation, because this is something where I don't think the Justice Department can investigate themselves. By the way, I'm not the only one saying this. Who else is saying this? Lindsey Graham, Chuck Grassley, and others are saying the same kind of thing. And here's the problem. The problem is that this was a very clear statement. I was very specific with the reporters I contacted me early this morning. Axios got the piece right. They put it out, Mike Allen. And I get a call from Kristen Walker at NBC. She wants the statement. She asked me in a text message if it was, can you please send me the quote you gave to Axios? And then she said about needing a special counsel to investigate Mueller. And I responded it was not about the special counsel investigating Mueller. It was regarding a special counsel to investigate conflicts within DOJ and FBI.
Actually, the words were none of this is aimed at Mueller. You actually said that to her.
Yes, and I've said it to you. I mean, I've been on your broadcast and said that we're not. And she said, okay, still send me the statement. I did. I sent her the statement, and I said again at the end of my message, please understand, none of this is about Bob Mueller or Mueller's investigation. It's completely independent, and it is. And Ari Melber from MSNBC sent out a tweet. Normally he gets about 100 retweets. He got 3,000 or more than that now, saying that I said, are you ready for this? That a special counsel needs to be appointed to investigate Bob Mueller, which, as you know, because I just read it, was the exact opposite of what I actually said. And Kristen Walker, the lead-in, as you just played it, to Kristen Walker, and that entire discussion that took place was they had this breaking news story, which was not ever true, and she said, you can't make this stuff up, and then NBC did. They made it up. Now, Kristen Walker tried to walk it back, but Ari Melber sure has not, and I've talked to him a couple of times today. I'm not talking with him anymore. That's why I'm talking to you, because this shows you what's going on here. If the narrative doesn't meet what the media wants, they change the story. If it's Brian Ross saying the president when he was, or then the candidate, Donald Trump, but he happened to be the president-elect. If it's Donald Trump Jr. received a tip-off from WikiLeaks 10 days before WikiLeaks was public, it was after that WikiLeaks was public.
But when you say in specific terms over and over again that it's not about Robert Mueller, and it's in writing, how do they possibly get away with saying just the opposite of that which you gave them in writing?
Our team just reviewed an MSNBC broadcast that was going on right now where they said, well, Sekulow did say that it had nothing to do with Mueller, but in some theory that they have, it could still be involving Mueller because Mueller is technically part of the Department of Justice. But I specifically said, I sent him to you, Sean, you got him. Fusion GPS, Bruce Orr, his wife working for Fusion GPS, by the way, an expert supposedly in Russia, as all this is going on. And that's what you can't make up, that's happening inside the Department of Justice. So that's how we approached it. But the fact that NBC, and Sean, I gave them the courtesy of talking to Ari and to telling him he needs to send out a correction, pull that tweet down. He sends out my full statement, not really a correction, just kind of the full statement without a context to it, and leaves up the other tweet. Why? Because that one's getting retweeted. So this is why I believe that we've got to call it exactly as you've been doing so effectively every single day and call out the media when they're doing this, because this is what they're in the business of doing.
See, but I think with libel laws the way they are and how difficult it is if you're a public figure to sue when things are purposely, said about you that are full of lies, I mean, now you've got to get into this whole area of, well, was there an absence of malice? And malice
of forethought, right?
I mean, and I think
you don't win those.
Well, the standard is so high, even though you said 1, 2, 3 times in this text exchange on the issue to the, I guess, producer, then they go out and say something just the opposite.
Well, no, here's what happened. The reporter, I want to say this. Kristen Walker apologized, but the problem is she said she sent out a memo, and in it she said, I made it very clear that, she said 3 times, that this was not involving the special counsel, Bob Mueller. But this guy wrote with this piece and left with it. I'm going to have, as we're on the air, I check to see if they've added any corrections. As of now, they haven't. And the fact is, Sean, you're right. You're not going to get them on the libel laws because forget that. So here's what you get them on. The truth. And the truth hurts when the media is getting clobbered because they want to change the entire discussion right now.
What do you, but it's almost out now every day, almost every story, and bias is, you can get to bias a couple of different ways. You can get to bias, all right, what Brian Ross did, what CNN did, those are overt examples, but then it's also the stories that they choose not to cover. The fact that the fix was in with James Comey and this kid Bruce Strzok, and Bruce Strzok is involved in every aspect of this. Then you're talking about Bruce Orr in the DOJ, and he's 4 doors down from Rosenstein, and Bruce Orr meeting with Fusion GPS during the time, and his wife working for them. How many conflicts of interest can you possibly have in one investigation?
Well, and then add to it that it may well be, we don't know this, but it may well be that the basis upon which FISA warrants were issued was this Christopher Steele Fusion GPS piece, which brings it up to a whole nother level.
Well, but the whole point, if this was Trump-Russia collusion, and I won't drag you into the other legal aspects of this, because with Paul Manafort and with General Flynn, there was nothing to do with Trump-Russia collusion. But when you look at it, now that we know, in spite of a year's worth of denials, that in fact it was Hillary's campaign and Hillary running the DNC, according to Donna Brazile, and it was their money bought and paid for, Russian propaganda, to influence an election full of salacious lies, and you have high-ranking members in the Department of Justice not only working for them, but their spouses are employed by them, and they're meeting with this particular group, and it could have been used as the predicate for the FISA warrant. To me, those are the stories the media won't talk about ever. That to me is bias.
No, of course. So here's what they wanted to talk about. They wanted to talk about something that did not exist. We have not said a special counsel needs to investigate the special counsel. So what do? They turn it into that. Then they issue their quasi-apologies, knowing that that's not going to get picked up. And that is the basis upon which that's the deck we've been dealt. So you know what we do? Fortunately, you're on the air every day. Fortunately, we can reach a lot of people just by doing this right now and set the record straight. But I'll tell you something, Sean. This shows you the media bias at a level I'll tell you something. I've never seen anything like it. Last week, let's think about last week. Tuesday, Deutsche Bank. False story. Even the newspaper that reported it said they never said that the president or his family was the subject to a subpoena from the special counsel. False story. Then, 2 days later, CNN, breaking news, they're gloating. An email from WikiLeaks to Donald Trump Jr. dated, they said, September 4, 2016, before it was released to the public by WikiLeaks, except for one problem. The email was not dated September 4th, and they had 3 different people review it, approve it, and no consequence to the reporter on that one.
But there are never any. I do think too, and this is a broader discussion, perhaps for another day. But I do think libel laws do need to be shifted and changed. Look at Great Britain; they have loser pay laws in terms of tort reform. I don't even think that's a bad idea, but if they were held accountable, if the standard wasn't so high that basically anybody that's a public figure, you can say anything about, and if you want to sue, you can't win. You're a lawyer. How many times have you gotten phone calls from...
look, if you're representing a public figure, the answer is you don't win. You don't bring the case because you don't win. It's so rare that there's a win. The knowledge of falsity has to be laid at their feet, although this would be pretty darn close. The problem is, what's the damage here? And you know what the damage is? It's they create a false narrative which gins up their base. But the fact of the matter is the American people, I think, are seeing through this. And they're not only weary of it, they realize what's going on here. And I talked about this on our broadcast. Here's the truth. The truth is, I sent you the text exchange with the reporter, Sean, because, and again, I'm not blaming her. I think this guy went off, but I don't know what's internally going on at NBC. But the fact was, at multiple occasions, I say what this is not. And that's what they lead with as if what it was. And by the way, they posted that as a news piece on NBCnews.com and MSNBC's website as well, it was up for 2 hours before they took it down.
Then you have another problem, and that is once a piece goes up over there, like in the case of this recent issue with Don Jr., then every other media source begins to just echo what they said, not even doing any investigative reporting on by themselves, and they just cite the other source. So NBC will quote ABC, which will quote CBS, which will quote the New York Times, which will quote the Washington Post, and it goes viral. And by the time you ever try to get it untangled, it's too late. The story went out, and the retraction is buried. Like if it's a story in the New York Times that's retracted and corrected, that's on page A99, where nobody's going to see it.
In little font you can't read. But, I mean, with that Deutsche Bank nonsense last week, you're 100% correct. Here's what happened. You had major news outlets reporting what this paper said in Germany, and the paper in Germany never said it the way they reported it. But so when I would ask the reporters about sourcing, they say, we've got really great sources. We really checked this out. And then, of course, they pull Business Insider pulls it back, Wall Street Journal. They all did their quasi-retractions, but you know what their retractions are, like you said, page, 8C in 0.2 font. But the point is, we've got to continue just to push back hard, and we're doing it, and I'm going to continue to do it. This one, I deal with a lot of these, Sean. This one really bothered me because I dealt with this at 5:47 this morning.
You have to deal with the special counsel's office in your role as counsel to the president.
Yep.
Is this something you would call and directly maybe even send them the text exchange and say, this is the truth?
And we will not need to do that. It's not going to be necessary, but I will tell you this. Again, it was unnecessary work created.
Well, what about all the leaks? I know somebody in this whole Trump-Russia collusion nonsense that was literally in a hearing. 1 minute after the hearing ends, stuff that is supposed to be kept confidential was leaked immediately to the liberal press. Immediately, within seconds.
Sean, I have left the Oval Office, and there are leaks within minutes after you leave. I mean, it's incredible. It's not as bad as it was, but it's amazing. I mean, this was back in the summer. You don't see that as much now. But the fact is, whether it's a leak, whether it's intentional misrepresentation, they don't feel like they have any price to pay. Now, a couple of these network personalities lost their jobs. I'm not advocating people getting fired. I'm not in that business. I'm in the business of get the record. If I give you a statement, put the statement out there in the context it was given when it was crystal clear what that context was. And they didn't do it.
All right, quick break. We'll come back. More with Jay Sekulow, Chief Counsel, American Center for Law and Justice, Counsel to the President, as we continue on the Sean Hannity Show. As we continue with Jay Sekulow, Counsel to the President and the Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice. This has now gone on for 7 months just with the special counsel. The discussion has gone on and the issue has gone on for over a year now. There's still no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. I would argue there is evidence. Hillary Clinton bought and paid for lies from Russia to influence the campaign. Then, of course, the fix was in with Comey and Peter Strzok. And then we have the Uranium One deal, which we've never gotten to the bottom of. And, all these same names keep popping up in terms of Rosenstein and Comey and Mueller and, everybody else that seems to be involved. They all seem to be good buddies in all of this. And, if you have biased people that are pro-Hillary, anti-Trump, and they're texting back and forth, and then you have questionable people that are appointed by Mueller, which I have been bringing out. I'm not trying to drag you into this. I'm just trying to understand at what point the other side gets investigated for what I can make a strong, powerful argument in literally minutes that laws were broken repeatedly.
Well, let me give you the position, be very clear. And that position is we have been participating and cooperating with the special counsel, and we've been very transparent. And we think that is the right strategy. I am very encouraged, and I believe we're going to have a successful conclusion to this situation. Having said that, I'm not going to comment on what's going on in Bob Mueller's office and what issues they've had. That's been discussed. That's not my job. My job is to work in representing the president's interests, as the White House counsel represents the White House interests and the official office of the president in that regard. So we have our different functions. My job is to bring this to conclusion as expeditiously as possible, and I'm still convinced and committed that we're going to get that done.
All right, Jay Sekulow, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice and Counsel to the President. Jay, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.